Right, we begin our webinar organized by College of Nursing, which is the mental health department, takes the lead of organizing this webinar. And the webinar is on the revolutionary approaches in restoring mental health during pandemic. Participants, if you could have a good control over the screen, I will appreciate you. Thank you for your cooperation. So before we begin our webinar, let's have a word of prayer. Father God, we commit this afternoon a time where we are going to learn and share our knowledge of Father God. As you know, this pandemic has brought in a lot of stress and a lot of things around us, which questions which cannot be answered. But we know that you are our protector, you are our guide, you are our everything of Master. This time we acknowledge that you take control of the situation, and you are our past, you are our present, and you are our future. The future is in your hands. We commit the session, the speakers, and the entire program into thy mighty hands. Take control of the technology. And Father, you be our guide. This we ask in your precious name. Amen. Right. So we have two eminent speakers who are with us this afternoon. Mrs. Senta Christy David, who is the clinical psychologist from SRMC, Sri Ramachandra Medical College, Chennai. She has completed an MPhil in clinical psychology in the National Institute of Mental Health and Neuroscience, NIMHANS, Bangalore in 2016 to 18, and MSc in applied psychology from Women's Christian College, Chennai, and BSc in psychology at Women's Christian College again from the year 2014, 11 to 14, worked as a psychologist at various institutions, and she has also won her dissertation prize for securing the highest mark in dissertation for the master's program in applied psychology. The Miss Chellamal Krishnaraj prize for securing the highest marks in behavior in organization in the year 2011 to 14, and she has published 2 research articles and presented in 1 research paper. So it's a honor to have you, Ms. Senta, with us. As a token of our love and appreciation, we give you this e-bouquet. Kindly accept, and thank you for being with us this afternoon, for sharing your knowledge with us. And we have the second speaker, Ms. Maheshwari, who is the Assistant Nursing Superintendent from Vijaya Hospitals, Chennai. And Maheshwari has completed her MSc Counseling and Psychotherapy from the Tamil Nadu Open University. She is basically a nurse, MSc Nursing and Psychiatric Specialty from Meenakshi College of Nursing in the year 2008, and BSc Nursing from CSI Jayaraj Annapakyam College of Nursing, and has received 15 awards and rewards in her career. Currently working as the Assistant Nursing Superintendent in Vijaya Hospital. Thank you, Maheshwari, for accepting our invitation and for being with us. Kindly accept our e-bouquet. And it's also my honor and privilege to invite all my faculty who are the mastermind behind Mrs. Mercy. Thank you for being with us. Thank God for the good health He has given you. And all the faculty members who have helped in organizing this program. This was supposed to be last month. Due to another webinar which came up, we had to cancel. So I am privileged to welcome each and every one of the participants who are here. So we are touching 300. So we go live on Facebook. So I will be sharing the link with you. So in case any of your friends who are not able to get in, because we have a maximum of 300 participants in our Zoom, and the remaining can watch at live Facebook. So it's a joy to hand over the session to the speakers. The session is over to you. So participant, kindly keep yourself in the mute mode so that you do not disturb. And we will leave the chat box open to you. So if you have any queries, kindly share your questions. The speakers will be glad to clarify your doubts. Over to Ms. Senta Mary.
Thank you, ma'am. I think your screen is being shared. So, yeah. Okay. Yeah. Okay. Thank you, ma'am, for your kind words. So, thank you, Triplum College of Nursing, for inviting me. It's been a pleasure to share and speak. So, I'll be handling the topic of pandemic and mental health in world history. Is my screen being shared?
Yeah,
Is everyone?
kindly make it full screen.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay. So I'll be focusing on the historic perspective of of mental health in pandemics throughout the past history. So the reason why why it is important to learn from the past is also to understand where we are heading and what we can do in the current. Um, with regard to the mental health in times of coronavirus, where a lot of importance is being given to the quarantining and isolation and focusing on the physical symptoms. No, there's a greater need to focus on the mental health during these times. So it's important for us to understand what has happened in the past. So I'll be going over some of the major pandemics that have happened in the past. So starting with very basic definition of what is a pandemic. Pandemic is the worldwide spread of a new disease, which is very simplistic to explain on that. WHO has given a definition in 2010, which says an influenza pandemic occurs when a new influenza virus emerges and spreads around the world, and most people do not have the immunity. Viruses that have caused past pandemics typically originated from an animal influenza virus. So this is more or less the definition of um, the definition of pandemic. Okay, I can see scribbles on my screen. Is somebody writing on it? I'm not sure. Okay, so going on to major pandemics in world history. Uh, so, like some of the things, some of the pandemics that I will be telling is from is way old, like it's in 430 BC. And from there we go on to gradually and see what are the pandemics in the present. So some of the pandemics are the Athenian plague, the Justinian plague, the Black Death, Spanish flu pandemic, H, HIV pandemic, SARS, severe acute respiratory syndrome, swine flu, Ebola outbreak, Zika pandemic. So these are the from arranging in a chronological order. So starting with the Athenian plague. So this originated in historic articles say that it started from 430 to 426 BC, and it originated in Ethiopia. The symptoms included headaches, conjunctivitis, rash, fever, cough, blood, and usually the person who's infected by this disease died in about 7 to 8 days of being infected. The survivors who had apart from the ones who died, and then some the people who survived the plague were left with certain symptoms like partial paralysis, amnesia, or blindness. So because these are the earliest accounts that we know about the pandemic, not much of it is talked about with regard to mental health, and so would be the other cases for other plagues as well. Next is the Justinian plague. So this happened in mid 6th century AD. This also originated in Ethiopia or Central Asia, and traveled and this traveled mainly through the trading routes to Rome and other parts of the world. So this is how we see that a lot of the disease, the plague, traveled very fast because of the trading routes. And some of the symptoms that the Justinian plague, when people are inflicted by it, the symptoms that they had are fever, fatigue, buboes in groin or armpits or ear, and this also led to delirious state, and this was the patients seemed like they were seized by madness. So this when it affected the neurological system, they were affected by the loss of consciousness and delirious state. So this is how the plague progressed. And during these times, lots of burials, huge burials, and happened. And because the trading routes were one of the reasons for spread of these diseases, trade was abandoned, and people also died of starvation rather than of the disease itself. So if you can relate to some of the instances that are happening even right now during the coronavirus times, that we can see that many people, because of financial and economic downfall, because of the lack of trade, and because of the lack of employment opportunities, people are being affected even in these areas, more due to starvation. So, and also people during this time have try to think of reasons why certain things happen, what is the reason for such disease. And some of the interpretation, again religious interpretations, such as punishment for sins and God's wrath, was also prevalent during those times. Black Death is another a severe plague that had happened that originated in China and eventually spread to Europe. This happened in 1334 AD. By around 1400 AD, about 150 million people died. So it was there for a long time, and it took many lives. The mortality of untreated bubonic plague is 70% within 8 days. So they later found out it is due to a strain of Yersinia pestis. So this happened. It's usually transmitted by rats, and then it goes to fleas, and then this is transmitted to humans through contact of that. So during these times, a lot of young doctors were recruited just for treating the plague and plague-related conditions. So a lot of art came out during this time, portraying how terrible these times were. And this plague doctor was one of the characters that were very seen during this time, because this is usually said it was like a kind of a mask that the doctor wore, so that because of the stench that the plagues released, and because in this Black Death, one of the things that how the patient would be affected is their skin, whatever the plague contracted, the skin it contacted, it would become dark and it become black in color, and it would release a lot of stench. So people use these masks and even put some herbs within, so that they would not inhale the smell. And this is also another the Triumph of Death is another famous art that came during these times, which portrayed how vast and how severe the death was during this time. This is also when the first quarantine happened in 1377. The idea of quarantine is when the affected people were kept in one place for 30 days before they enter into the city, if they had traveled through the trading routes, and later extended to 40 days. During this time, again, a reaction of people would be either to one head into complete lewdness and revelry, while others turn to religion and extreme piety. So people found their ways of coping with the disease and reacted in different ways. The Spanish flu is another famous flu in the past, which also took a lot of lives. That's from that the span of Spanish flu was from 1918 to 1920. This was caused by H1N1 strain of the influenza virus. This happened during a very crucial historic time, which is in the middle of World War I. And the origins were USA, China, Spain, France, and Austria. There's not one particular place that it was said, but then these were all the places that it originated, and possibly 100 million people died. This was a very short period that the Spanish flu, when compared to Black Plague, this was a very short span, but yet it took more lives than the Black Death that killed in a century. So the survivors who survived this Spanish flu had sleep disturbances, had depression, has mental distraction, had dizziness, and difficulties at coping at work, and it was also related to suicide. So these are few of the studies that we have gotten from what happened to the mental health of the survivors in these times, in the pandemic times. And approximately 1 million people worldwide were affected by encephalitis lethargica, although there is no conclusive evidence of causality. So this is an illness which is called the sleeping sickness, where people were affected, and yet this happened simultaneously when the Spanish flu was happening. Although we can't possibly conclude it was because of Spanish flu, but lots of people were also affected by it. This is characterized by a lot of lethargy and a lot of dizziness and drowsiness, and which also affected the brain. So this took a lot of toll on the emotional resilience. This led to a chronic state of helplessness, and many people, because lost their loved ones. For instance, one of the data says in November 1918, 31,000 children in New York City alone had lost one or both parents. That's a huge number of children who grew up being raised as orphans or people who did not have parents. So that was a big hit for the whole country. And the civilian patients and the staff's mental health were ignored and more focused on shell-shocked soldiers. So again, this happened during the World War I, and so a lot of focus was given on to the soldiers who were recovering from the illness, and they had to be given care because they were on the front line giving fighting for for their countries. So because of a lot of focus that was given on that, the civilians and the staff's mental health were completely ignored. Also, this leads us to another point of focus about asylums. 20,000 patients died from all causes. That is only 1/5 of the entire asylum population. So 7,000 deaths were caused by potentially preventable infections, particularly TB. Influenza killed a further 1,300, and flu was only one cause of many disturbing asylum deaths on the background of substandard care. So this shows that when the plague happened, when the Spanish flu was happening, people in the asylums, people with severe mental illnesses were left. They were also not given care and not given proper treatment. Because of this, not only because of the Spanish flu did people die, but also due to other potentially preventable infections. So, because of the priority of the soldiers, others were also given less importance in terms of care. So this is one snapshot of what it looked like during the Spanish flu. So the idea of wearing a mask, or again penalized for it legally, also came during those times, and a lot of caution was taken care for not spreading the virus. Next, moving on to HIV pandemic. This is something that we know in the recent past has started, and it has been slowly progressing throughout the whole world. And it started in the early 1980s in USA. Initially, it was predominantly found in the gay population, but right now it's about 40 million global prevalence is present. So this is the data of from 2018. The total prevalence rate is 37.9 million, which is a huge population that is being affected by HIV. Although it is easily preventable, it's still prevalent, and it is progressing to very specific populations also. What are the mental health issues? So because HIV has been prevalent for a long time, and it has been there for a long time, it's been also studied very intensively. Depression is found to be about 22% in this population, which is twice more than the general population. Because of HIV, because of AIDS, people lose their social support because of a lot of stigma that is associated with it. They lose their job opportunities, leads to isolation and stigmatization. This is also associated with other conditions such as substance abuse and poor compliance to life-saving treatment. This, when AIDS progresses, it can also have neurocognitive impairments. So this is this is in the past 12 months. These are the, like, if we were to take a survey with people who were affected with AIDS, then the highest percentage would be these the ones that are marked in orange, that is anxiety, depression, and ongoing emotional distress. Although they are susceptible to other medical illnesses and physical illnesses, you can clearly see that mental health takes a huge toll on them because of ongoing anxiety about future, depression or regret about certain choices, or to be continuing to have certain illnesses, and other associated, even medical conditions can also cause a lot of depression and ongoing emotional distress among these patients. Next comes severe acute respiratory syndrome, which is SARS-2. This again originated recently in the 21st century, originated in China. The mortality rate is about 10%. The symptoms include such as fever, dry cough, and shortness of breath. Even as we know, coronavirus, some of the strains of SARS are only present in coronavirus as well. Due to vigilance of public healthcare systems, it was soon contained by mid-2003. So this again is the overall prevalence of SARS throughout the whole globe. This is the number of cases and the number of deaths that are presented in this. And this is an overall general summary of mental health related concerns during SARS outbreak from various studies. You can see the symptoms of PTSD, which is the post-traumatic stress and disorder, was widely prevalent among men and women, 13.3% in men and 18% in women. Medical staff that experienced trauma was a lot as well, 93.5%, which is almost most of the people who are working in the medical places. And increased stress levels, stress among physicians, hospital staff, emotional distress, nurses, emotional distress, sleep disorders, insomnia, diminished social life, depression and impact on college life, stigmatization, poorer emotional state, fear, anxiety, loneliness, stigmatization, all of these are present in the respective percentages. So as you can see that it affects across different people, to the patients, to the staff, to in colleges, in every domain, and so in other social domains as well. So this is one. And the staff, that is 2/3 of reported increased concerns for their personal and family's health, and 1/3 expressed emotional distress. In Taiwan and Singapore, 75% and 21% of mental care workers experience psychiatric morbidity respectively. So then there's an also interesting study on effects of quarantine, because now that we see quarantine is that's so widely done as a measure to prevent illnesses. One of the study which says that symptoms of because of the effect because of quarantine, some of the symptoms of PTSD and depression were observed in about 28.9% and 31.2%, which is quite a huge number, which are affected by the isolation. And acquaintance with or direct exposure to someone with a diagnosis of SARS was also associated with PTSD and depressive symptoms. So even just acquaintance or a direct exposure to someone with so that leaves that like most of the population being affected by depressive symptoms, and just a lot of fear associated with it could be social contact, or it could be moving to a new place or visiting somebody, or it can be any hint of social contact can cause a lot of stress and anxiety with people, and especially people who are more prone to anxiety and who are more vulnerable population are even more affected, because any slightest contact with anybody can cause a bout of anxiety. Next comes Ebola virus. Ebola virus disease is a deadly disease with occasional outbreaks that that occur primarily on the African continent. So Ebola virus most commonly affected people and non-human primates, that is primates such as monkeys, gorillas, and chimpanzees. It is caused by an infection with a group of viruses within the genus Ebola virus. So this was it came primarily from Africa, and the primary host was fruit bat, which this also spread diseases to other secondary hosts such as gorillas, chimpanzees, antelopes, and pigs. When these infected hosts came in contact with humans, or the infected humans came in contact with other humans, it spread through blood, secretions, or organs, or other bodily fluids, through broken skin or mucus or other bodily fluids. So this is how it was transmitted. This is another picture of the same. So, what are the effects of mental health on during these during Ebola times? Was mental health services were overwhelmed due to loss of life, grief, and extreme anxiety experienced by patients, family members, and healthcare professionals. So, a lot of because every pandemic leads to a lot of people dying, and also people surviving, going through grief, going through anxiety, all of that. Mental health services were overwhelmed, and most traumatic experience were watching others die in isolation wards, and reluctance of mental providers to provide care, providers to provide care. So this was another traumatic thing that people who survived went through. And in 2014 study, they had studied psychological distress and social support of Nigerian patients affected by EVD, found that survivors experienced inability to concentrate, lack of sleep, unhappiness, again, which are all symptoms of depression. So survivors also continue to have mental health issues, even though the physical symptoms have subsided. So, healthcare workers experience post-traumatic stress disorder. This again is a recurring theme throughout the whole pandemic, different pandemics in the past. So, seeing one of the studies had mentioned about the risk factors and protective factors. Risk factors for suicide include local epidemics of suicide, isolation, loss, physical illness, and barriers to accessing mental health treatment. This is also the case right now for the coronavirus, where people are finding it difficult to access mental health because we are not in in the frontline treatment right now, and so people to even reach out if they want to has been difficult, and this has happened in the past. And some of the protective factors include family, community support, and religious beliefs that discourage suicide. So these are a few of the protective factors that have helped people in the past and continue to help. During these times, the 4-tier intervention pyramid model was also put forth. Um, One is restoring the affected population's basic services and security. Second is strengthening family and community networks. Third is providing psychosocial support to distressed individuals. Example, during the acute stage of illness, during the laboratory testing periods, and before discharge. So these are all the times that it is good to provide support and prevent any kind of further the patient going into a depressive mode, or a feeling overwhelming anxiety, all of that. And fourth is providing specialized mental health intervention for severely affected survivors. Again, this is the last step where a few percentage of the population go into a severe no need intensive mental health intervention. So this is based on clinical training and mental health guidelines in emergency response efforts. So this should be done accordingly. Then finally, the Zika virus. Zika virus is spread mostly by the bite of an infected Aedes species mosquito. So these mosquitoes bite during the day and night. It can be passed from a pregnant woman to her fetus. And infection during pregnancy can cause certain birth defects. So far, there's no vaccine or medicine for Zika, as per the information from CDC. So usually, this is a picture which represents the Zika virus and its transmission. So, what are the symptoms, or what are the complications? Neurological complications include congenital microcephaly, Guillain-Barré syndrome, myelitis, and encephalitis. So these are all neurological and developmental syndromes that affect the fetus if the mother is affected. In Brazil, in 2015, for example, there were 2,400 birth defects and 29 infant deaths due to suspected Zika infection. And 4 out of 5. So another thing about social media was 4 out of 5 posts on Zika on social media were accurate, yet those that were trending and gaining popularity were posts with inaccurate content. This is also seen in during these times when social media people put a lot of posts, and which increase anxiety and fear among people, and inaccurate information also. So it is important to get accurate information through valid resources and reliable resources. So this was also seen, and this caused a lot of anxiety during those times as well. This is an example of children who have been infected with Zika virus in the fetus. So to summarize the overall pandemics, how it affects mental health at different levels. Now, when the person is during the new onset symptoms, the person has has adjustment disorders or depressive or anxiety disorders, or more like features than disorders as such. While when the conditions worsens, when the symptoms worsen, there could be an exacerbation of an existing mood or psychotic or addictive disorders. And how does it affect the caregivers and friends? So usually depression, anxiety versus stigma and shaming also happens during these times. So these are the levels at which mental health issues can happen throughout the pandemic. Having said that, most of the research articles have focused on the negative effects of mental health issues during pandemics, but because community as a whole has a lot of resilience to overcome illnesses. In the past, people also try work on it, have then once the pandemic is over, people come together and are able to form new systems, create new support, and overcome the illnesses as well. So I hope that there are research that come up in the future which also focus on the positive effects of pandemics during those times. So these are some of the references that you can go through. Thank you.
Participants, if you have any queries, kindly leave in the chat box. So far, there's not much of things come up. So probably we will reserve it to the last. Thank you, Senta, for taking us through the history. Yeah, right. Can I invite Mrs. Maheshwari to take over? You have to unmute yourself, Maheshwari, and share your screen.
Good afternoon, ma'am.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon to everyone. I would like to express my gratitude to the principals, organizing chairpersons, Dr. Rosalind Rachel, ma'am, Triple M College of Nursing, and the HOD, Mental Health Nursing Department, organizing secretary of this webinar, Mrs. Mercy, ma'am. And I thank my Vijay Hospital management who authorized and encouraged me to do this webinar. And I would like to congratulate all the organizing committee who chose this topic, which is very appropriate to the current scenario, which is the revolutionary mental health approach, which is very essential during this pandemic to preserve the individual potentials as well as to face the pandemic. So today, my topic is comprehensive mental health solution during this pandemic. To achieve the comprehensive mental health, we have to address some of the psychosocial elements. And these elements are COVID-19 impact of mental health in a public as well as the infected persons, suicide, burnout, and how to preserve the mental health of the healthcare workers. So the previous speaker spoke about very clearly how the past incidents and the pandemic affect the mental health of the person. And quickly, we will review about this COVID-19. Pandemic means it's a worldwide spread of a new disease. And this coronavirus, otherwise known as SARS-CoV-2, caused by severe acute coronary respiratory syndrome coronavirus. And the clinical manifestations, as we know, the common symptoms are fever, dry cough, fatigue, and the uncommon symptoms like a headache, nasal congestion, sore throat, cough with sputum, shortness of breath, pain in muscles, joints, and chills, the nausea, vomiting, and diarrhea. And in severe disease, the patients have high fever, hemoptysis, leukopenia, and kidney failure. And why the healthcare workers are getting COVID-19? There was a study done by Zabersky et al. And it was published American Journal of Infection Control, 11th August 2020. And the report stated that carelessness among the healthcare workers is the first and foremost reason why we are getting, because we all know that we know everything. So we will be careless in following the protocols and policies. And the other thing they have said, it is not only through the patients, it's passed through pre-symptomatic and asymptomatic colleagues also be a virus carrier. Then interactions and prolonged exposure time. This means not even patient's care area, even in the pantry or canteen, wherever it is, if you're exposing more than 15 minutes continuously to a person who is having the virus carrier, you may be getting this issues, the disease. And the infection can occur in non-COVID areas, not only COVID areas, the non-COVID wards also, it's very risk. And the atypical symptoms and delayed diagnosis of healthcare workers is the main cause for the infections among healthcare workers. And the less testing among the healthcare workers leads to more issues. So when we are doing more testing and finding the person's initial stage, and we can control and contain the infections. And they have said that 14% of the healthcare workers get infections from out of the hospital. In that, 50% of the source was not identified. So this is the recent study they have done and expressed how to be careful as a healthcare workers we are. And this COVID-19 pandemic is affecting the mental health of the person. So you know that mental health is a psychological well-being or absence of a mental illness. How it is affecting COVID-19? Because the disease itself will cause many fear and anxiety. Apart from that, this pandemic is associated with the distress, anxiety, fear of contagion, depressions, and insomnia in general, as well as the healthcare professionals. If you take this, some of the public health actions itself making distress to the patients as well as the healthcare workers and the public also. Example, social distancing, quarantine, all those things. And how to overcome this, the mental health issues during this pandemic is coping. Coping with the stress in a healthy way will reduce the stress. So am I get this mental health issues or stress? No, everyone is not equal. That means everyone is individual, is unique and different. If you're taking, everyone will react to the situations in a different way. Example, in your family background is good, and you have a social support and family or friend support is good, and financially you're well and it is supported by your family members, and your health and emotional background, the community where we are living, all those factors are influencing and controlling the stress during the COVID-19 pandemic. Who will be the vulnerable populations during this? So who is having already comorbidities, and the children, teens, and the elderly people, and the immunocompromised elders, especially cancer patients, and the frontline workers like healthcare workers, doctors, nurses, paramedics, and the first responders also like police, food supply persons, then the essential workers, food industry persons, and the people who have already mental health illness, and the substance abuse and substance use disorders. So those are all the people are vulnerable populations. And due to this COVID-19, many of them, they have lost their job, and their working hours changed, reduced, or extended, or the major changes to their employment also will cause stress for the people, and it is affecting the mental health of the person, especially healthcare workers. And the people who are all homelessness, migrants, and disabled also, the vulnerable populations. So what we can do this, how this pandemic impact on mental health in a public. So fear and worry is the major, first and foremost, among the person's financial situations or job, loss of support from the services. All those things are leads to fear and worry among the healthcare workers as well as the public. Fear taking changes in sleep, difficulty in sleeping, disturbances in eating habits, difficulty in concentrating, worsening of chronic health problems, worsening of mental health conditions, and the tobacco and alcohol and other substance uses also. It is a major impact, this COVID-19 major impact on mental health of the public, which all leads to stress, anxiety, and depression. So this is, we have seen the mental health impact of mental health on public. We have seen now infected persons. What about a person, the patient? The distress due to quarantine is the major issues, and the travel restrictions. If you're taking travel restrictions during this COVID-19, one or the other way, every one of us affected. Example, the loss of loved one, unable to attend the funeral or the marriage functions, whatever it is, travel restrictions, and the side effects of the treatment, fear of spread of infections to the family members, because I have old age people at my home and I have a newborn in my family. How I will do work in the COVID area, how I will go to home, should I spread the infection to them? All those worry and fear about the spread of infections. Social stigma. Even if the neighbors are coming to know that I'm having a COVID-19 positive, what they will think about me, they will segregate me, all those fear. And fear of role changes. This is a very, very stressful situations to the patient as well as the public. I have seen a patient, a primary mother, admitted in a hospital for delivery, and she delivered a baby, and the mother tested, it was positive, and the father also tested, it was positive. Father admitted in a hospital and the mother admitted in another hospital, and the baby tested, the baby was negative. So think about the stressful situations of the family. Everybody role changed here. The mother is not able to receive the baby, to hug and kiss after the first baby. So all those things, it's a fear and worry. And fear of death, because we all know that this virus, which causes more fear among even educated persons. So life-threatening viral infections also is a major problem. You see insecurity, confusions, emotional isolations, unhealthy behaviors, substance abuse disorder, post-traumatic stress disorder, suicide, all are common. So many evidence we have the psychological impact of COVID-19 on this mental health. Many studies they have performed worldwide, and it indicates that there is a many issues and mental health impact. Q et al. He performed a survey among 52,730 Chinese people. In that, about 35% of the participants had psychological distress. In another study, another survey done by Kaiser Family Foundations, where 45% of the adults in USA report that their mental health has been negatively impacted due to worry and stress over the coronavirus. Another study done by Lee et al. He conducted around 17,865 people before and after the declarations of COVID-19 in China. The negative emotions like anxiety, depressions, and anger rose, whereas the positive emotions and life satisfactions diminished. In another study, Ahmed et al., he conducted a survey, online survey among 1,074 people, where the survey found elevated rates of anxiety, depression, harmful and alcohol use, and decrease in mental well-being. Another study conducted among the healthcare professionals in China. They have conducted among 1,257 samples selected, and they have examined the state of mental health of the healthcare workers. The result revealed 50.4% of the study participants reported depression, and 44.6% anxiety, 34% insomnia, 71.5% had distress during this survey. And the frontline health workers, professionals who are taking care of the patients with COVID-19 had a higher risk of having symptoms like depression, anxiety, insomnia, and distress compared with the other medical professionals. Like other medical professionals means the professionals involved in care of patients like paramedics as well as lab investigation people and then pharmacists, all those things. So multiple evidence are there. Psychological impact of COVID-19. The major psychological impact of COVID-19 is the suicide. And we all know this nowadays, recent newspaper, everywhere, social medias, we are seeing many of them committed suicide during this COVID-19. So the major psychosocial element is suicide. So multiple evidence is there all over the world. After the pandemic or during the pandemic, many of them, they committed suicides due to the psychological and social effects. So the COVID-19 pandemic also is associated with the distress, anxiety, fear of contagion, depressions, and insomnia in general populations, as well as the healthcare professionals and the vulnerable populations also. So the stress related to psychiatric conditions like mood and substance use disorder, both cause suicidal behavior. And the COVID-19 survivors also have elevated suicidal risk, studies revealed. So we all know, we have gone through the Spanish flu and other pandemic by the previous speaker, where the pandemic of Spanish flu have taken the life and it has affected 1/3 of the world populations, which was happening 1918, the last century, caused by the Spanish flu virus. After the incident, after the pandemic, the Spanish flu epidemic was associated with an increase in death by suicide. And this is due to the decreased social interaction during the epidemic, as well as the increased suicidal fear due to that increased suicidal rate. And we have an evidence before also SARS, which was happened. There was a significant increase in suicidal deaths among 65 years and over the age during the year of 2003 of SARS outbreak in Hong Kong. And many research indicates that this is an increase in suicidal rate due to the fear of contracting the illnesses, general anxiety, social isolations, and psychological distress. And very important and evident one is the high probability of COVID-19 survivors, especially who had affected severe COVID-19, are at elevated suicidal risk. So if a person is getting treatment and discharged even after severe COVID-19, has to be observed for the suicidal risk behaviors. And many cases reported all over the world, especially UK, USA, even India, Bangladesh, many of the countries reported suicide during this pandemic, COVID-19 pandemic. Few case reports I will reveal here. A 19-year-old waitress in England died in a hospital after a suicidal attempt because of fear of mental health impacts of isolation. A 66-year-old man with throat cancer hanged himself in a New York City hospital after testing positive for the coronavirus. This was happened even in Tamil Nadu. We know that a famous halva stall owner, Tirunelveli halva stall owner, he committed suicide after his report is positive. He admitted for another renal treatment, but he committed suicide after seeing the report of positive. Like that, many incidents even in India. Another man, he was feared about contracting the COVID-19. So he shot his girlfriend as well as himself, but the report was negative. Another 36-year-old Bangladeshi man, he killed himself because of fear of spreading the infection to the village people. He had only common cold and flu symptoms. his postmortem report revealed that he was COVID-19 negative. Another case reported, the 49 years old head of the emergency department in a New York City hospital died by suicide. Before he committed suicide, he expressed to her family members that um, she has seen the tremendous sufferings of the COVID-19 patients, as well as many deaths during care of the patients. That makes her feel depressed and she committed suicide. And many calls for suicidal prevention center hotlines are so busy. After that, they have received many calls, increased calls during this pandemic. And even we have in Chennai hotlines to prevention, suicidal prevention hotlines, calls are there, like a Sneha, Jiva. So we can help the public to create awareness among the public. When they have a suicidal thoughts, they can call to these hotlines to ventilate themselves and get help. And this is the flowchart. We can see that suicidal behavior in vulnerable populations during this COVID-19 era, this uncertainty and social isolations, economic problems, all these cause, and along with the vulnerable populations like individual who's having pre-existing psychiatric disorders, already I said mood disorder and substance abuse disorders, low resilient people, and individuals who reside in a high COVID-19 prevalence areas, and people who have family members or friend who has died of COVID-19. And these are the exacerbation of pre-existing psychiatric disorders, depressive disorder, anxiety disorder, alcohol and other substance use disorders, and other psychiatric conditions. All these things along with the vulnerable populations end up with a suicide. So how we can prevent this or stop this or early identification of this? So psychosocial assessment and monitoring is very essential to control or prevent the suicidal behaviors among the public as well as the healthcare workers. So some of the stressors has to be identified initially, such as infected sources from the family members or exposure to infected sources, loss of loved one, or any physical distancing. These are all the stresses has to be assessed, as well as the secondary issues has to be addressed, like economic loss and the psychosocial effects of depressions, anxiety. Psychosomatic preoccupations also has to be addressed, like insomnia, sleep disturbances, and the substance use disorder, domestic violence. Here we can see, we have heard after opening this TASMAC during this COVID-19 quarantine time, after that release of TASMAC, many of the domestic violence happened because of the substance abuse. And many cases reported suicide. A mother and a daughter committed suicide by burning themselves because of the father violence. After a long time, he drank and he came to the family. Like that, many cases reported even in Tamil Nadu and India. And indicators of vulnerability has to be addressed. Pre-existing physical or psychological condition has to be addressed. So these are all the areas we have to monitor and assess to control and prevent the suicidal behaviors. And these are all the suicidal preventions, how to prevent the traditional and social media campaigns to promote mental health and reduce the distress. So what we can do here, creating awareness about the COVID-19 which was happening, as well as see how to reduce the distress. That camping, social medias and mass medias has to address how to control, how to reduce the stress. As well as the people are encouraged to stay connected with maintaining the relationship by telephone or video. This was happening nowadays because many of them, they are making video calls, and even we are having the webinar through technology we are using to stay connected. And adequate sleep and rest, healthy balanced diet, regular exercise, and we have to early screening for anxiety, depressions and suicidal feelings. And the suicidal prevention helplines also to be active to help the public as well as the healthcare workers. And some of the psychiatric disorders has to be addressed, and the people, they have to compliance to their medications as well as a follow-up with the mental illness. And the suicidal preventions can be done by among the general populations by decreased stress, anxiety and fear and loneliness. And community outreach program has to be addressed, especially who has a history of psychiatric disorders as well as the survivors, COVID-19 survivors and the older adults. So community outreach program to address these issues. And many studies have to be conducted how mental health consequences can be mitigated during and after the COVID-19 pandemic. So the suicidal preventions help among the healthcare professionals. Healthcare professionals, I said, and I have quoted some of the incidents, healthcare professionals are more vulnerable to the emotional distress due to the current pandemic. And the first one is fear of exposure to the virus. Due to this, I have seen many of the staff nurses in the initial stage of this pandemic, they have resigned their job. Fear of exposure to the virus. Due to that, they have resigned their job. And the concern about infections and caring of their loved ones. Already I said, if I'm working in a COVID area, how I will take care of my family who is having elders as well as a child. And shortage of personal protective equipments and long working hours or changed working hours. So these are all some of the issues has to be addressed in the institutional level to prevent distress, which will end up with a burnout, which will end up with a behavior changes and suicidal ideas. Then ethical dilemma in resource allocations is very common. And I have seen in social medias, some of the nurses from UK and USA, they were crying for allocations, resource allocations to whom they have to give importance and priority. A very young person who is having severe COVID-19 or an older person who is having milder symptoms. So like that, the ethical dilemma for care of the patients is very important. And prevention efforts also important, like a problem, mental health problem screening, psychoeducations as well as psychosocial support. So referral is very important. If a person having already mental health issues, continuous referral, formal mental health evaluations and care, and supportive interventions also necessary to promote the wellness and coping of a public. And screening and monitoring the work related to stress and the burnout, which is very important. We are going to see detail about the burnout and how to control and stay away from the burnout in the next sessions. So screening and monitoring the work related stress is very important. And the stress management and coping, such as structuring activities and maintaining the routines. And pandemic related, we have to be sometimes away from the pandemic related news, which will cause more fear and anxiety among yourself. So you have to monitor and limit it. What you're reading, what you're hearing is very important related to the COVID-19 news as related information. If you want to get a knowledge from the approved websites, not no need to get it from all the social media informations are not correct. So you have to refer CDC or WHO guidelines reference. So open discussions can help and encourage to address the children's reactions and concerns. And we have to identify the source of stress, limited treatment options, insufficient PPE and other medical supplies, extended workloads, identify the healthcare providers. We have to identify the source of stress among the healthcare personnel, as well as education and training is very essential. How to cope up with the workload or changing working hours. And we have to address the psychosocial issues of health system leaders, first responders, healthcare professionals also. And very specific approach to the individual who is having the recent suicidal attempt. So we cannot treat them like others. They need more attention. For the recent suicidal attempt person, continuous observation should be there and monitoring should be there. So we have seen the major element of suicide and the psychological impact of COVID-19 on mental health. The very major effect is burnout. So this is very common among the healthcare workers. And what is burnout? It is burnout is the emotional and physical exhaustion of a people it is directly related to the excessive study or workload related. And this burnout can cause significant changes in your physical, emotional, as well as psychological, spiritual damage to the people. And we all know that this burnout is very common among the frontline healthcare workers like doctors, nurses, and some of the paramedics. So what will happen if we are not addressing this burnout? So this burnout will lead to, especially this circle is for the nursing. You can apply this for any healthcare professionals. Turnover, the employee turnover is very common due to this burnout. Due to the turnover, nursing shortage will be there. So what will happen? Shortages, inadequate staffing, increased workload, increased working hours leads to job dissatisfaction. So what will happen? Automatically, all this happen, the patient's care and the patient safety and quality of care become query when in a healthcare organization. So what we can do to address this burnout? The early identifications of this burnout can be prevent many of the other mental health issues, like warning signs and symptoms has to be observed by the individual, by the administrator of the institutions, or by the friends or colleagues who is having this signs and symptoms. Example, physical signs and symptoms of burnout. If you are seeing physical signs and symptoms of burnout, tiredness will be there, exhaustions will be there, and if you're taking a lower immunity, feeling of sick, headache, back pain, muscle aches, changes in appetite and sleep. So these are all the physical signs and symptoms which will alert you. So you have to be alert. If you have all these signs and symptoms, be alert and address it, because this may lead to burnout. If you are taking the emotional signs and symptoms of burnout, a sense of failure, a sense of doubt about own, helplessness, hopelessness, trapped, defeated, loss of motivations, decreased satisfactions, and sense of accomplishments. So these are all the signs and symptoms of emotional burnout. And some of the behavioral signs and symptoms are like withdrawing from the responsibilities, self-isolation, skipping the work, or taking a long time to complete a work. These are all the behavioral signs and symptoms of burnout. So we have to be address all these symptoms when in the earlier stage. So what I can do as an organizational head, I'm an organizational head, what I can do to control this burnout among my employees is provide them time, space for rest and meals, allocate appropriate working hours, recruitment to replace the persons where there is a turnover in all levels of categories of employees, and address the issues related to workload, per day, how many hours working, per week, how many hours they are working, on-call duty, how they are going to manage, or OT hours, overtime, how they are going to manage. So an organizational head, I have to address all those things. As an administrator, the departmental head, what I should do it, I have to train directly. I can train my staff related to what are the signs and symptoms of burnout, how to identify and how to report it, if need, how to get counseling from others. And I have to be arrange free counseling sessions for my fellow members as well as my employees, my colleagues, and how the stress management sessions and soft skills training program for my employees to cope up with the current COVID-19 situation. So these are all from the organizations as well as from the administrator, how to help others to overcome the burnout. So we should know the difference between the stress as well as the burnout. If you are seeing the stress, emotions are overreactive, because at the time of stress, we will be reacting. Fight or flight ideas will be there, do or die. But whereas in burnout, if you are seeing the emotions are blunted, and in stress, it will produce more urgency and hyperactivity. Whereas in the burnout, the people will become helplessness and hopelessness. And if you're seeing in stress stage, the people will have loss of energy, and here you will have loss of motivations, ideals, and hope. If you're seeing in stress, it leads to anxiety disorder, whereas in burnout it leads to detachment and leads to depressions. So the primary damage here is physical in stress, whereas in burnout the primary damage is emotional. So we have to know the difference between the stress and burnout. At the stage of stress itself, it should be managed to prevent the burnout stage. Self-help is the best help. So how to prevent this burnout? By myself. Even the organization is helping, my friends, colleagues are helping, but I want to stop within the earlier stage. So what should I do? So see, these are all the sum of the tips we can apply to prevent this burnout. So you can start your days with the relaxation rituals and meditations, prayers, and you can adopt a healthy eating habits, exercise and sleeping habits, which will help you. And you have to set boundaries. That means this many works I can complete today. If you cannot, you can say no, whichever you can't. And you can do the work time management. So set boundaries for your works. Take a daily break from the technology. Sometimes the technology will cause more fearful situations than if you are away from the technology. We can't completely away from the technology, but at sometimes away from the social medias, and take a break from that and nourish your creative sides. That means you can spend your own time for your personal time, for reading books, watching good television programs, as well as reading, writing, drawing, all those things, creative sides. You have to nourish your creative sides. Then learn how to manage stress. This is very important. Each individual is unique in handling the stressful situations. So we have to be aware which is making, what is the stress as for me, how to control, how to overcome, or how to reduce it. So these are all some of the burnout prevention tips which help you during this pandemic. Okay, we have seen so far some of the psychosocial elements like suicide, burnout, which create more mental stress as well as mental health issues. Okay, how to overcome this? As on-duty healthcare professionals, how I should overcome this? You can use this 4 C's to overcome the issues. So what are the 4 C's? Coping, concern, care, and counsel. So we will see what is concern. So what should I concern? And you know this every day, policies and protocols, guidelines are changing every day, day by evidence, by the CDC as well as WHO. So the healthcare industries as well as the organizations, they are adapting every day the changes. And we all know that initially whatever they say, the government says, the protocol says is not applicable now. So concern about what? The challenges, what we faced, what the healthcare professional faced is a concern about the healthcare professionals, what we are facing. So what is the concern? Concern about the challenges faced by the healthcare. So what are the challenges faced by the healthcare workers? And I said every day, new policies and procedures regarding taking care of the COVID-19 patients, and the policies related to PPE, personal protective equipments, resource utilizations, and we need intense training regarding the infection control, PPE policy, whereas a specific area specific as well as the procedure specific, because initially everyone is very anxious about how to use the PPE, what are the PPE should be used, because it's very new to everyone. We didn't expose it like this pandemic before. So PPE usages in many of the hospital making protocol and policies are challenges they faced. And shortage of manpower. This is very common all over world as well as in India. Recently, I have attended Ministry of Health and Family Welfare India have organized a webinar like this, the best practices they have shared, where they have shared in their hospital, 50 to 70% of shortage of manpower due to the turnover was happening due to this COVID-19, and how to organize the non-COVID shift and COVID shift for the manpower to avoid manpower shortages. And if a healthcare worker become positive, how I'm going to manage that particular area with the limited staff, how I'm going to quarantine them, all those things, shortage of manpower. This is the major issues faced by all the healthcare hospitals of this in Tamil Nadu as well as India and overall world. And another challenges is formation of emergency team. How to form the emergency team and coordinate with the non-medical team. The emergency team, they know the steps, how to activate if there is an emergency, everything. So during the COVID-19, it is another crisis for the healthcare organizations to address the forming and coordinating the care of the patients. The other challenges like technology in training is another issues, because we want to train the staff, but how you will train them, because we cannot gather everybody in the auditorium. So we have to conduct like webinars, online webinars, sending WhatsApp videos and other things. Then non-compliance of policies and protocols, adherence by the supportive staff is another challenges faced by the healthcare institutions. Pooling of staff nurses in a different categories like diploma nurses, even A&M nurses, BSc, master degree, pooling of them and dividing their work role changes, workload. So all these and another challenges faced by the healthcare professionals as well as the institutions. High stress level of healthcare workers. This is another issue faced by the healthcare industries during this COVID-19 pandemic. Another one is new instruments and equipments training, because already we are not supposed to gather the group in a particular place, but we have to train them. So online training, on-job training, the very 1:1 training, all those things are happening. Every institutions to train the staff as well as the healthcare workers to take care of the COVID-19 patients. Okay, this is direct healthcare professionals. I face many challenges. What about as a teaching faculty in an institutions? Yes, they are also facing challenges during this pandemic, because they have to be expert in using the technology during the online classes, and they have to make a teaching materials, and they have to cover the syllabus. And there is a query, will the students work with full attentions and concentrations? Because we are all know what our kids are doing during the online classes. They are making on, they are leaving and they are moving, they are doing some other things. So will the attention will be there? This is challenges faced by the teaching faculty. And copyright issues, I want to show some videos or something online. So it is a copyright issue, some materials I'm going to use, I have to, copyright issues are there. And repercussions of student dissatisfactions about the teaching method, because traditional method will be different, this online classes and other things. So we have, they are also facing, teaching faculty also facing challenges during this COVID-19. So how to address these challenges? Confident in using technology and applications, clear and organized presentations of materials, and stimulate and increase the active participation of the students. It's not like a classroom teaching, though they have to clarify their doubts through this chat box which is provided, Zoom meeting and other things. Then faculty has to be very enthusiastic, helpful and engaged. So the first C, we have seen concern. So concern about what? The challenges faced by the healthcare workers in the institutions as well as individual. Counseling. Counseling in another C, where it is addressing, assist and guide in problem solving and decision making. So how I can, and you know this, most of the healthcare industries and organizations, they have recruited MSc psychiatric nurses, clinical psychologists and psychologists during this pandemic in their institutions to counsel the employees to cope up with the new changes, new challenges. So how I can do this counseling? By a proper supportive communications. So we are all know that communication is very essential, which will reduce most of the stress among the employees or the subordinates under us. So the best way to handle the frustrations in the workplace is being a better communicator. So I have to speak very clear and the team with the team regarding an issue or a concern. Instead of I'm taking my own decisions, I can discuss with my team workers, and directly I can address the individual concerns, as well as the good communication is the best way to resolve the issues. So supportive communications is very essential, and even the everyday interaction should have a supportive communications. And we have to be a good listener. Why? Because God has given one mouth and 2 ears to listen more and talk less, to support others, and active listening is very essential. When we are listening, we have to use our appropriate posture, and we have to be concerned about non-verbal communications, our non-verbal communications, eye contact, because we have to maintain proper eye contact. If you are good in your posture and your attention, your non-verbal communications, but you're forget to maintain eye contact, which leads to misleading from your communications or conversations. So they will be relaxed if you're listening to them. And when you're talking, when the communication is in progress, you have to be calm and use soft tones of voice with moderate volume. And we have to arrange there should be an interpreter for a different language with the patients as well as your healthcare workers, employees. And we have to maintain physical distance. We should not forget, because this COVID-19, 6 feet at least you have to maintain distance between when you are having communications or counseling sessions. Attitude of caring is very important, as well as we have to be aware of our both verbal and non-verbal communications. And we should use the communication techniques in a proper way. Appropriately, we have to use like a clarifying, focusing, paraphrasing, summarizing, all those things. All the techniques must be used during this counseling session. The next C is care. Care about what? We have seen, we have what we have to concern, how to counsel, and what is the care? How to care about? First, you have to care about yourself. Then they care about the institutions and the organization. So how to care myself? The self-care is very important, because if you're healthy, you can care your patients. So self-care for healthcare providers: monitor your own stress level, stress reactions and performance, and seeking appropriate assistance with the personal as well as the professional of mental health. If you think you need a counseling sessions, very well you can approach your counselors who is appointed in your hospital, or the persons who is there to ventilate your feelings. And alerting, so assignments and schedules. So you have to alter the assignments and schedules by yourself, and creating mechanisms to offer psychosocial support as needed. So these are all the self-care. And you can get an accurate information from the proved CDC as well as WHO health guidelines, instead of getting from the social medias. So update yourself about the disease as well as your health condition. Eat well, get good sleep, exercise every day, and recreational activities you have to involve, like reading, prayer, talking to a friend. Ventilate your feelings to whom you are trusting. Talk to your managers, supervisors, or colleagues about your well-being at work. And you have to establish your daily routines as well as your time management is very essential to avoid stress. Then avoid use of alcohol, drugs, and caffeine or nicotine. And you have to be realistic, what you can do and what you cannot do it. And apart from all those things, you have to be get trained to support yourself by some of the psychosocial skills. This REBT, REPT, they will say this REPT can help you to elevate your negative thoughts. So it is a simple technique. What you can do with this? So this is called rational emotive behavior therapy, REBT, they will say. So whenever you're getting your negative thoughts about whatever it is to reduce your stress or negative thoughts, so you just close your eyes for a few seconds and just have an imagination of this stop signal. What they are using, the signal, that symbol you just remember, or you have in your imaginations, imagine it, and think positively. So stop the negative thoughts and think positively and go ahead and do your other works. So this is a simple technique which will be very useful for you to elevate your negative thoughts. REBT. Think, stop, think, go ahead method. You can use it. Now, another psychosocial skills, you can have your relaxation activities, stretching activities, dancing, yoga, and you have to meet the spiritual needs. Prayer will elevate many of the stress. So regular involvement of your prayer times and prayer activities, breathing exercises, deep breathing exercises, pranayama, and one of the other techniques is progressive muscle relaxation techniques, which is very helpful to you at the time of stress, and you can relax yourself and you can regain your positive attitude and thinking and thoughts. So how I can perform this progressive muscle relaxation technique? This is a simple technique. This is otherwise known as Jacobson's progressive muscle relaxation techniques. So before going to perform this techniques, you need a place where it is calm and quiet without disturbances. You have a spread, you can relax lying positions, supine position with the relaxed muscles. Then you have to follow 3 steps to do this procedure. So we are going to do this progressive muscle relaxation techniques by tense the muscle, group of muscles, and after that relax the muscles. This is a technique you have to use at this time of relaxation techniques. So when you're doing this, you have to start the muscle tense and relaxations from your fingers. So from the fingers, it has to come to your wrist, then your joints, upper arm, shoulder, your forehead, eyes, nose, mouth, neck, chest, stomach, back, then legs, and the last foot. So what you have to do, you have to apply tense over your muscles about 5 to 10 seconds. Hold it for 5 to 10 seconds, then relax. So when you're making tense, you have to inhale your breath. When you're relaxing the muscles, you have to exhale it. Like this, you have to concentrate each muscle groups from the fingertips to the toes. And before entering into the next muscles, you have to take 10 to 20 seconds rest. Then the first step. So this is the way you have to do, and this progressive muscle relaxation techniques is very useful to relax yourself at the time of stress, as well as which will improve your health. So no, this is the normal persons who is having. Suppose you are encountering a person who is in a serious distress in your institutions or in your home. What you have to do? Safety first. So see your safety, get help from others to take care of the person. Let them know who are, keep calm, listen to them, offer practical comfort and informations to them, help people to regain the control, provide clear informations, because in these situations, even your small non-verbal communications and cues will make the opposite persons will get more stress and become aggressive and agitation. So we have to be clear informations to them, stay with the persons and refer if needed the persons to the specialized support, mental health support. The last C is coping. We are all know that coping means it is some of the efforts taken by the individual to reduce or minimize or to elevate the stress. So this coping, individual coping mechanism is different. Some of them they will accept and adapt and they will go on. Some of them for simple thing also they will be more worried and emotionally upset. So coping is very important during this pandemic. So how I will cope up with my family if I'm taking care of the patients in hospital, how I'll take care of my family. So some of the stressful situations can be avoided by prior things like a deep and breathe exercise, meditations for the family members. You can train, teach them healthy and well balanced diet. And if a person is positive in a home, you have to away from them, always wear a mask, and you have to monitor the clinical worsening symptoms in the family like a breathing and low oxygen level. And if a person is they don't have a fever in a family member, they don't have a fever even after positive for the 72 hours, and that was the symptoms improve, and after 7 days there'll be a non-contagious, so no need to worry about it. So these are all the coping instructions for the family as well as the family members. So this COVID-19 is having lot of impact on psychological aspects, mental health aspects, as well as the physical. But we have learned many things from the COVID-19 also. So each embrace each scar as a lesson learned. So what are the lessons learned? We learned from the COVID-19. We learned department-wise updations, everyday updations, even the worldwide World Health Organization itself updating every day, and revived the policies and protocols, and daily feedbacks from the family, and the weekly discussions among the zone owners, and many training classes and biomedical equipments related management, infection control practices, intensive training, how to do it, even the COVID time we learned. And the stress management, we learned the stress management among the healthcare workers also, and 24 hours helpline in many hospitals they have given the helpline numbers. So if a person becomes sick in the home itself, they can call and inform. Through the phone they are giving counseling. If needed, they are coming to the hospital for the treatment, or they are taking rest. These are all the things which will prevent the spread of infections among the healthcare workers. Even online and virtual demonstration classes, and effective and appropriate communications to reduce the stress. So these are all the lessons we learned from the COVID. And take home messages for this. As the on-duty healthcare professionals, we are more prone to get stress. So think positive, manage your stress. For this 4 tips, you can use it. Deep breathing exercises, ventilate your problem to whom you're thinking you can trust that person, and relax yourself, take adequate sleep, healthy food habits and time management, and spend your personal time, as well as do a teamwork and be a good listener and communicator, which will alleviate most of the issues in an organization, as well as your stress. Think positively, be optimistic in your thoughts, and control your negative thoughts by REBT, and relax yourself by the progressive muscle relaxation techniques. And the last not but the least, and the clips I have seen in a social media, which I want to share with you. The deer has 90 km per hour of running speed, whereas the tiger is only 50 km per hour. But the deer become a victim of a person, of a tiger. Why? Because the deer is every time is looking at the back. It's thinking it's weak. This makes the deer become a victim of a victim to a tiger. So never underestimate your potentials, your willpower. And this is why happening with the COVID-19 pandemic also, we are losing our power, and which is very weaker than the immunity of a person. So we have to be courageous, face the issues, problem, feel free to ventilate yourself to your subordinates, colleagues, supervisors, managers. have a good communications with them, do a good teamwork. So do not lose your courage and cope. With that, I'm concluding this comprehensive mental health during this pandemic, and I thank for this opportunity.
Thank you, Mrs. Maheshwari, for taking us through so beautifully, which was really the need of the hour. I thank you so much. I thank Mrs. Senta Christy David for her sharing also, who has taken us through the various pandemic situations and how we have, the historical perspective is very important for this generation. This is the first pandemic, but pandemic is something which is, something which we cannot avoid. Things will come up. So I read an article where Dr. Ida Scudder, the founder of CMC Vellore, she has, during her foundation days when the hospital was in a small hut, at that time she has mentioned, my dear colleagues, prepare yourself for the pandemic. But after she has mentioned there was no pandemic, but it is, it has, if at all the people or the leaders have feared such a pandemic would come up, nobody would have expanded and the hospital wouldn't have grown. And the present director, when he was sharing, he said, the new hospital building, even before the inauguration, had to be given for the pandemic. So that is the scenario. So as leaders, as human beings, even more than the leaders, what I would say is just look for the future. The present situation will pull you down, right? So this also will pass away and we will also come out of it victoriously. There's no doubt about it. All of us have a fear for our body. If at all I become sick, if my lungs are going to be affected, and if something happens to me, what will happen to my family? Our daily cause are our anxieties. So as the speakers have beautifully mentioned, we have to just live for the present. Yes, the pandemic is on me. What am I supposed to do? Yes, the do's and don'ts. If I just look back at, the things which has happened during the pandemic, lot of lessons. I'm sure each one of you, when you take out the list, I do that very often. I just make a list of all that I have gained during this pandemic. I am able to face the future. I am able to do a lot of things. All that we were not skillful for, we are becoming skillful. All that we were not socializing, we were doing it. All people to whom we have not connected, we are just calling up and finding out, are you okay? So like that, I'm sure each one of you have, a list of things which you have gained out of the situation. Probably a disappointment, something which has upset you. There are so many people who tell me, I lost a job, but then there was something else which came up to me. I have lost an important person in the family, but God has helped me in this way. Once you cling on to your own strength, that is where we have problems. When we think that, no, it is not my ability to do something. When we start thinking, that's when it pulls you down. It is not you, it is you. The God who is within you is the one who's taking you through. So every day we need to think, what am I supposed to do today? And today's course is what I need to really manage. And it's, as you said, the important part is communication. Stress is a part and parcel of every person's life. Every day, the stress factor keeps varying from, every situation. When you wake up morning, you are so relaxed, but as the days go by, something keeps piling. But at the end of the day, have you kept your, stress away? And then are you relaxed for what you are supposed to do? So within an hour, things just fade away. But when you put your arms in the hand of your creator and you go by. So I'm sure the people who are working at the hospital side face an enormous amount of stress because you're staffing and, everyday protocols. I know at Madras Medical Mission, the leaders tell me every day the protocol is changing. Today we decide on something and at the end of the day, something different comes up. Even the transportation mechanism, even the way in which things are all communicated to people, everything keeps changing. And this situation will definitely go away and we will also come out of the situation. So that's the biggest hope we have. Now, to the audience, do you have any questions? many people have appreciated. Thank you so much for all your participation. All over people have come in, and we have gone live into Facebook, so I can't track number of people in the Facebook. So we have always kept at, our 300 level was there, plus it was on Facebook. So thank you, the speakers. You did a wonderful job, especially Center, who took us through all those pandemics. So my young children who are here would be thinking, this is the only pandemic, and that's the reason we are all like this. This is not the only pandemic. We have gone through so many situations, and everything will change. Okay, right? And same way, Maheshwari has beautifully dealt with the coping mechanisms, how we need to deal with our stress factor, which is the need of the hour. Each one of us, our stress level is different, our coping is different. Some of us are very sensitive. Some of us are, resistant to the stress which comes up. Some of us, I know people who feared pandemic, who kept them locked. I remember some people, their door was never open. Their apartment door was always closed, and then they were kept, they were very safe, but then something attacked them, and they were, so frustrated. How could this happen to me? And some of us, with all situations we are traveling, especially the health worker. So your self-care, when we say self, that is very important. Who you are, how far you take care of yourself, and how far you are useful to the society, that is very important. Share your knowledge, keep the stress level of people to the less. That would be the take-home message for each one of you. So let us learn from the past. Whatever has happened in the past, let us learn. Let us profit by the present, and let us live for the present moment, and just think that the future is not in our hands, but in the hands of the Creator. So let's leave our hand free to the Creator, and He will take us through. That's the assurance I have every day. So should be the assurance which each one of you have. Thank you, all the participants who have all over. I have a few of you from Andhra, from North, and so many people have connected. Thank you so much for accepting our invitation. And I thank the Mental Health Department, Mrs. Mercy, who was the key person. I'm seeing the speakers today, so let me be honest. She was the person to identify both the speakers. Thank you so much. And she was so anxious to have it last month. So probably, we are connected with more things, and because of this delay, next week we are going to have another one and a couple of things on mental health. So that is the good thing of the delay. So your department is going to get strengthened more. Thank you so much for identifying excellent speakers, and thank you, my dear speakers, for being with us. Is there any questions there? If not, I will hand over the session to Mrs. Mercy, who will give us a formal vote of thanks. I thank all my colleagues for helping me through this particular program. Thank you so much. Is there any questions? Would any one of you like to unmute yourself and ask a question? No one? There are a lot of appreciations which has come up in the chat box saying that your presentation, so you can browse through. Thank you for all your feedbacks, which will give a boost to my speakers. Right, can I hand over the session to Mrs. Mercy? Nice to see you. And yeah, over to Mrs. Mercy. Can you hear me, Mrs. Mercy? Unmute yourself. Yeah, you're okay. You can speak now. No, okay.
Hello?
Yeah, I can hear you. Yeah.
Yes, ma'am. Good evening to all.
Yeah, you're audible. You're audible.
Yes. Good evening to all. It's a great honor and privilege to propose the vote of thanks to the August gathering. I think we have quite well adopted to the first of its kind, the virtual gathering series, which is the new accepted normal. I give all glory to the God Almighty for making this event a fruitful one. I lay my appreciation and gratitude to the distinguished speakers, Mrs. Senta and Mrs. Mageshwari, for agreeing to deliver the topics and willingness to share their experiences and knowledge. I see that you have with great ease and confidence dealt the topics which was considered challenging one. That shows the strength of your experience, practice and efforts. Thank you, Mrs. Senta and Mrs. Mageshwari. I thank the MMM management for the opportunity provided and support given during the session. I am grateful to Principal Dr. Mrs. Rosalyn Rachel for her able guidance and encouragement throughout the planning and preparation. Thank you, ma'am. I express my sincere gratitude to the Vice Principal, Dr. Lata Krishnan, for her enthusiasm and support all through the program. Thank you, ma'am. My heartfelt thanks to the vein of the virtual platform, the supporting staff, faculty of different departments, non-teaching faculty for their untiring support and help. Thank you. I thank all my colleagues for the words of inspiration. Thank you, my friends. Last but not the least, I thank all the participants from various colleges, my friends, our students who have taken time to virtually connect in the thirst for knowledge. To conclude, I would like to remind the audience about the words of the great reformary Florence Nightingale. Never lose an opportunity of urging a practical beginning, however small, for it is wonderful how often in such matters the mustard seed germinates and roots itself. I hope this session brings forth some change, some beginning, and some wonders in mental health. Thank you.
As a token of appreciation, we give our certificate to Mrs. Senta Mary. We'll send it to you by mail. Thank you so much for accepting and being with us. And also a certificate for Mrs. Senta Mary. Thank you so much. Participants, kindly fill in your feedback forms. So you should be getting your certificates by mail. Kindly fill in your feedback forms today itself so that you will get your certificates by tomorrow. Thank you so much. We have some more webinars coming up next week. Kindly participate. We will circulate it to you. Thank you so much, each one of you, for being with us. Thank you.